here in the room, but also at home for those joining us online today. Welcome to this kickoff event. My name is Nora Laufer. I'm a journalist at the daily newspaper Der Standard, and I'll be guiding you through this afternoon. It's really nice to be here again, so thank you for the invitation. And it's also really nice to see people again and face it, not on Zoom or Skype or Teams or whatever, but real faces. Before the official part of the event will start, I will give you a short guide through our afternoon and evening because we have quite a tight schedule and a big program. So first of all, there will be some welcoming and introductory words of Helga Kromp-Kolb. She is the academic head of the summer school, a climate scientist, which probably most of you know. And today she's also representing the BOKU because the directorate of the BOKU is not able to make it today, unfortunately. Afterwards, we hear from Guenther Jedliczka. He's the CEO of OeAD Student Housing, and he's the initiator of the summer school. Last but not least, we'll hear from Karin Stieldorf. She's the academic director of the master course Sustainable Construction here at TU Wien in this beautiful building. Later on, there will be 4 short talks or inputs, 15 minutes each, on today's topic, which is fighting climate change in times of health and economic crisis. So quite a big topic for a short afternoon. First up, we will hear from the economic researcher Stephan Schulmeister, followed by Helga Kromp-Kolb and Karin Stieldorf, whom I have already introduced. Then there will be a short coffee break of 30 minutes. There will be cake and refreshments. And after the break, we will welcome Leonore Gewessler. She's the Austrian Federal Ministry of Climate Action and Mobility. She's not able to be here right now, but she'll join us later on. And then after that, we'll have a 1-hour panel discussion, not only with our 4 panelists here today, but also with all of you. You can also ask questions and participate. I will explain that later on. That's it for now. One more thing I have to say, I would kindly ask you to keep distance through the whole afternoon. You can always take off your mask when you're seated, but once you leave your seat, please just put your mask back on and try to stay with the baby elephant in between you. All right, then Helga Kromp-Kolb, please.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the opening of the summer school's Alternative Economic and Monetary Systems, as well as the summer school Green Building Solutions. As already has been indicated, you will see me here several times. I'm sorry for that, but I have been asked to take the part of director of the BOKU as well, because he's has been. This is not, that's too early. That's my 3rd part. We'll get there. Okay. He has been prevented from coming on short notice, so I have the honor of welcoming you in his place. And of course, I'm especially pleased to also announce our minister. And the full title I have to read because I still don't know it. It's the Austrian Minister of Climate Action, Environment, Energy, Mobility, Innovation and Technology. So obviously we're going to solve all the problems because everything is combined in that ministry, but of course it's quite a task also to do. She will be here with us today, and kindly enough she has agreed to not only just give introductory words, but to really discuss and give a short lecture on transformative role of Austrian climate policy at national, European and international level. Due to time constraints, she is arriving a bit later. Moreover, I would also like to welcome the speakers, Stephan Schulmeister. Yeah, okay. And Karin Stieldorf, who will both give impact lectures. And I myself also have this pleasure of doing it. And of course, I'm also very grateful to our moderator, Nora Laufer from the Standard, who will lead through this evening. The auditorium is made up of different groups. We have some students from the summer schools here, those students which happen to be in Vienna or which came extra to Vienna. However, the summer schools will be virtual summer schools, so we don't have all our students here, unfortunately, but they will be with us in a virtual manner. We also have opened this opening evening to the general public, and thank you very much for your interest for coming here. The Technical University, we owe thanks for making this beautiful hall available to us for this opening. It's been already a tradition of opening our summer schools here, and I think it's one of the most beautiful halls we have available in this very sustainable building construction material, wood. BOKU itself is sort of the home, the scientific home of both summer schools. And we are also the ones who give our students afterwards their credits. And we've been part of both of these summer schools since their initiation. And it's been a real pleasure working with the summer schools. And we think, as BOKU, we think that this is an important addition to our normal lectures and courses we offer at our university. The university considers itself one of the leaders in sustainability, and of course we try to walk the talk, and one of the aspects of that is that the buffet today, as the whole meeting, will be according to the City of Vienna's criteria for eco-events, and we have a special attraction this time. The coffee has been sail shipped from South America to Europe to make sure that our carbon footprint does not become too large. I will not talk much about the summer schools themselves because you will hear something from colleague Stieldorf and from myself later on. I think one of the interesting parts is that due to the restrictions placed on such summer schools, to the fact that they are virtual, has of course made things a lot more difficult for our organizing team, which I will mention in just a minute. But it has also given us more opportunities. It has given us opportunities to have speakers that would never have come to Vienna otherwise for the summer school. But in this way, they just have to spend the limited time of their lecture and the limited time of their discussions. So we have really top people that we might not have had otherwise. Of course, some of the others we have lost due to this arrangement. Nevertheless, I think they're both going to be very good summer schools this time again. Yes, I think that's, I'm sure the rector would have told you a lot more about BOKU, but I will not do that. If you're interested, I'm willing to discuss it afterwards, but I won't keep you now from going into the summer school itself, the summer schools themselves, and into the topics that we want to discuss this evening. So once more, welcome to both summer schools, welcome to our guests here, welcome to all of the lecturers that might also be following in a virtual manner, and I hope the summer schools will be as successful as the past have been. It's the 10th one for GBS, it's the 7th one for AEMS, and I think so far they have really been very successful, and I hope that we can keep this up also in this virtual manner. Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure that you're all here. Well, first of all, I want to start with the main idea of this summer university. It was the idea of fighting climate change. And that was the reason why we organized these two summer universities. Well, first of all, I give you a small impression what the OeAD Housing Office is doing, our main business. Our main business is accommodating international students and guest professors coming from all over the world to Austria. Well, we are a 100% subsidiary of the OeAD, and what is very important for us also, we are a non-profit company. Well, just a few facts and figures. We accommodate around 10,000 international students per year, around 3/4, so 7,500 in Vienna. We have built 8 dorms in passive house construction, and we are using nearly in all houses solar energy through photovoltaic. Well, this was our first passive house we built in 2005. So this year we celebrate our 15th anniversary. We are very happy with the house. It's very close to the University of Economics. At that time, it was the first newly built student dorm in passive house construction, and at that time also the biggest in the world. Well, another very nice project. We finished it in 2016. It was built for the Montagne University, very famous university in Styria in Leoben, and it's nearly completely in wooden construction, also with a lot of photovoltaic on top. Here you see how it looks inside. It looks more than a hotel than a student dorm. And what is very important for us, the students are very happy with the dorm. And for us, it's very, very good because the energy costs are very low. Yeah, as already mentioned, why these two summer universities? Well, I think it's a very nice saying by Victor Hugo. There is nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And we think, yeah, the idea is there, and now we have to do it. Well, that's what you learn even right now. I studied economics at the University of Economics in Vienna, and that's what you learn still at the university, that there is an homo economicus. Well, I think that's not true. That's the reason also why we do this summer university. Well, there are problems and there are solutions. And the idea of both of the summer universities, on the one hand, we want to show the problems, but the main focus is on the solutions. Here you see, I also like sayings. That's a very nice saying by Henry Ford at the beginning of the 20th century. He said, "It is well enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning." Even at that time, it was, yeah, not a very good system. Well, just to give you one example of what we are teaching at our summer university, it's only a part, but I think a very important part. It's called sovereign money or positive money. In German, it's called Vollgeld. It's one of the possibilities. Just to give you a broad overview, the advantages. There is nearly no problem with interest and compound interest. One of the biggest problems we have, the economy no longer has to grow. Money creation only by the national bank, currently 90% by private banks, and that's very important right now, especially in Burgenland. Money at your bank account is 100% secure. That means there is a problem right now in a bank in Burgenland where this bank went bankrupt, and only up to 100,000 euro the bank account is secured. So companies who have a lot more, they won't get it anymore. And with this system, that can't happen. There is no longer, or nearly no longer, financial speculation by banks or bailout by big banks. Reduction of government debt up to 2/3 within a couple of years, which could be also very important after now the corona crisis. So if I think after the corona crisis, Austria may have a budget deficit of up to 90%, but you could reduce it within 5 to 10 years to 30%. It sounds very strange, but it could function. And another good example is no longer paying interest on government debts. Austria at the moment pays around 6 billion a year for interest and compound interest. Just to give you the example of Austria, with the other countries, it's very similar. Well, Margaret Thatcher, Prime Minister in the UK in the beginning of the 80s, one of her favorite sayings was, "There is no alternative." This saying is also very present by a lot of politicians right now, and we changed that to "There is no alternative for alternatives," or "There are plenty of alternatives." Well, that's also a very famous game. I very often played it when I was a child, I played it with my children. And what I learned only in the last 5 or 6 years, also with our summer university, that décadence is how, or monopoly, how it is in English, the winner takes it all, how our monetary and financial system works right now. And at the end, if you have played it, there is only one winner, normally, or maybe two, but normally one. Well, Greta Thunberg, their first protest was on the 28th of August 2018. It's unbelievable what she had done within these nearly 2 years. So you can see that one person can do so much. And finally, this is for you as the audience, but also for our students. Come on, start now. What's very important, be courageous. Zack, 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 very important, and be clever. Thank you.
So, I'm back again. This time it's about the EMS. No, it's not. Okay, thank you. Okay, I just need the computer to give you the statistics because I don't know them by heart. I'm talking about the Alternative Economic and Monetary Systems Summer School. This is a summer school that does what the title says. It confronts students with alternative economic and alternative monetary systems. We do not pretend to have the answer. We do not pretend to know this is the solution. But we discuss this with our students, we discuss the different options with our students, we discuss the advantages, the drawbacks of different systems, and what is very important to me is we discuss what effects does this specific system have, or how does this specific system help being more conscious and helping our ecological system to survive. So what do these different alternatives, what do they do for staying within the planetary boundaries? What is additionally necessary? Because a lot of these new systems or alternative systems were not developed out of a thought for climate change or biodiversity loss or staying within planetary boundaries. They were developed because the economic system as such or the financial system as such are in crisis. But not every solution for the crisis is also a solution for the bigger problem. So this is what we really want to teach, what we want to discuss. And the summer school took place the first time in 2014. We had some 30 students then. Since then, it's been gradually grown, and we have a serious discussion every year because the teaching staff, do not think that we can handle very well more than 50 people in one room. There's so many more applications, so there's always a discussion of, well, can't we take 52, 55? Well, but it's always around 50. This time it's fewer. Overall, we've had some 280 students passing through our summer school. This time it's only, let me see, 38 participants from 17 nations. Over the whole period of time, we've had 70 different nations. So you can see it's a very international school. And we're very grateful for that because the international views bring in additional aspects that would not be handled otherwise. Nevertheless, the focus, especially because the lecturers essentially come from industrialized nations, the focus is on industrialized nations. We do not really have the competence and the wide competence of treating the whole world. So there is a focus. Our participants this year are from Austria, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Switzerland, and Ukraine in Europe, from Mexico and the USA in the Americas, and Ecuador and Peru as well. We have somebody from Australia, we have from Vietnam and India, participants from Asia, and we have people from Egypt, Nigeria, and South Africa from Africa. So you can see we're a very mixed group. We've already had one session this afternoon, and it's going to be a very, very creative and enjoyable meeting, I'm quite sure. We've already seen that there's different positions, different main foci of interest in the students, and that's always a very good, very, very advantageous for discussions within the group, and that is where we really learn new things. I would like to express my thanks on the one hand, of course, to Guenther Jedliczka, who not only initiated the summer school, but also has been a sponsor of the summer school and has really, with his staff, supported the summer school substantially. He and the OeAD housing office. The major bulk of the organizational work is done by his staff, especially by Karin Stieldorf, standing over there. She is also, for all the students who are here or who watch this, she is also the main point of address if you have any problems. And so far, she's always managed to solve the problems. I'm sure this will continue in the same way. We have young scientists who support me in the scientific organization of the summer school. They are also here, at least two of them are here, Ernest Eigner and Matthias Kirchner back there from the Economics University and from BOKU University. Helga Kromp-Kolb from the Economics University is at present in Latvia and is only virtually with us. So the four of us will try to manage the summer school, and it's very important that we have these economists, because I'm a climatologist, and well, it is a summer school about economics and monetary systems. So I think we will be a very good team. We have also additional support by Filip Bohacek, Christina Butzko, Chiara Beck. Chiara and Philip, I don't know where Philip is at. Oh yeah, Philip is behind the scenes there. They are also here, and they are helping with the organization, and the students will have a lot of contact with them, I'm sure. Not to forget Petra Isep, whom you see running up here trying to get me organized. Thank you all for your support. One further comment, one further thanks I should express, and that is to the Economy for the Common Good and its founder, Christian Felber, who I just saw slipping in here, because they have also been supporting us very strongly. Yes, I think that's all I need to say at the moment. Maybe a little bit more on the approach we take. This summer school is organized in a manner that we have asked our lecturers to supply video material or reading material to the students. It's been online for the most part for about 2 weeks. Students prepare by going through this material, and every afternoon they have the chance to meet some of those lecturers and discuss with them. So the virtual part will be interactive discussions with the lecturers. We hope that this will help students, give students a chance to really listen to the lectures and repeat them and stop them where they want to think about things. So it's maybe even better than having the person in the room. But afterwards, in the afternoon, there will be this interaction with the lecturers. We'll see how it works out. It's a first try, but we've tried to make it as interactive as possible and as informative as possible. Essentially, the issue is, as Guenther has already said, we can't go now, and the question is what changes are necessary. And that is the issue of different aspects. We're talking about, of course, the economic system, but we're also talking about the monetary system. We're talking about the natural systems and how they all interact. We want our students to leave this course with critical thinking about many of the narratives and the myths that seem so obvious and almost natural laws, but they are not. They are part of an economic system that needs to be changed if we want to meet the challenge of climate change, of biodiversity loss, and a lot of other social challenges as well. So the idea is to trigger or enhance critical thinking and hopefully go back into their own universities and ask their professors, keep this critical mind alive, and thus spread it to a wider group of students and also to the professors. I'm a professor myself. I know that it's much more practical to give the lecture I gave last year and then the one I gave the year before. It takes a lot of effort to really change, and especially if it's a paradigm change. If you don't just need to change a few numbers, if you really need to change your thinking. And that is something that universities are not very used to do, unfortunately, but we need to do it now. And we hope that this summer school is one small piece in a big puzzle, a piece that will help to change, in the end, change the world. Thank you very much.
Well, good afternoon and a warm welcome to you, all of you here, and to the students far away. Unfortunately, our rector and vice rector are not here at the moment, but let me send you the best greetings from both of them. As the representative of the TU Vienna University of Technology, I'm very happy that you all have come to be part of the opening and of these two exceptional summer schools. So I speak now for the second summer school for the Green Building Solutions. We really feel honored that also Minister Gewessler will come. She will not only be present, but she will also give us an insight into the political development of measures against climate change. The fourth pillar of sustainability, as politics is often called, decides what and how quickly can and will be done to prevent serious damages in the future. Well, Green Building Solutions is held as a cooperation with BOKU Wien, where we have the best partners concerning the fight against climate change. Welcome to you, Professor Kromp-Kolb. And last but not least, also welcome to Guenther Jedliczka, Director of OeAD, who was the initiator of this summer school. I can remember well when we started to think about how to organize and how to structure this university, this summer school. And of course, also thanks to the organization team. Within the time, a very well-working organization team has been developed under the lead of Barbara Meyer and also other colleagues dealing with sustainable architecture as well. This time, Vienna it's a special university summer school because it takes place online. We have long considered and decided that the continuity of the GBS is particularly important in order to continue to successfully motivate young people to face climate change. Today we are here in the Kuppelsaal of the Vienna University of Technology. It also is a very special place and stands for sustainability. When the TU was expanded at the end of the 19th century, nothing was torn down, but the roof structure was just raised. So it's really very special, and it shows that, and you still see the original construction here. It's still standing, and it's standing well. It also proves that wood is a good building material, and which grows back and lasts a long time. Well, I would like to thank you for the attention, wish you all a successful and exciting time, and pass the word over to our moderator. I have been short, but I hope I will have more time later on for the keynote.
Definitely will. Thank you for those welcoming words. Maybe a short explanation to the international students who might not have understood the zack, zack, zack. It's quite a common saying in Austria, but maybe not abroad. Maybe Google it at the name Ibiza, a beautiful island in Spain. It's about an economic system called privatization, but it's maybe interesting to you too. Now we will have 4 talks, short talks, 15 minutes each, and I would kindly ask the speakers to stay within this time frame. I'll be sitting right there and give you a short sign after 15 minutes and maybe kindly interrupt you after 17 minutes. First up is Stephan Schulmeister. Thank you very much for coming.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to present some thoughts about concrete steps in the transformation process towards a sustainable society. Now, the title sounds very ambitious, so I would like to stress the word concrete. And due to time constraint, I would like to move forward to my main thesis. Clearly, the global society is confronted with 3 big challenges: overcoming the economic crisis, overcoming the social crisis, including the health crisis, and probably most important over the long run, the ecological crisis, so to speak, climate change. And these challenges, to my mind, call for very huge investment programs in the spirit of Roosevelt's New Deal, combined with technological as well as social innovations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, both in production and consumption. And at the same time, carrying out those investments over decades, as we shall see, would, of course, also promote for a transition period economic growth. Now, all these investments, of course, need very clear price incentives, a very clear price signal, and that should be that the effective costs of carbon emissions should rise steadily and faster than inflation. Why is this so important? Simply because the profit from green investments consists of avoiding future emission costs. And if everybody knew that, for example, the price of fuels, of fossil fuels, would continuously rise, then it might motivate people to buy an electric car, even though it is in some sense not so convenient as a diesel car, for example. what is now the big problem to my mind? That the traditional measures to set price incentives, and this is either carbon taxes or emission trading systems, both cannot establish the expectation of agents that emission prices will continuously rise. Take as a simple example the development of fuel prices over the past month. 6 months ago, you paid on the filling station €1.30 for a liter diesel. Now you pay between 90 cents and €1, in spite of the fact that we have a very high tax on fuels, which is essentially similar to a carbon tax because it's a quantity tax on the quantity of diesel you consume. To give you just a move forward to one of my pictures. Do you see the cursor also? I don't know. But you can see the red line is the world oil price, and the blue line is the diesel price at the filling station. It is clear that both prices develop in tandem. Now, if world market prices for crude oil are as unstable as they are, it is impossible, even though we have a quantity tax of almost 50% of the final price, to produce the expectation that emission costs, and that means fuel prices, in the future will permanently rise. If you look carefully at the chart, you will see that over the past 12 years, diesel prices at the filling station declined by roughly 30% in 29, between 2014 and 2016, and recently. And under these conditions, it is not possible to make people think it pays off. I stress this economic factor. It pays off to move to other technologies, for example, electric cars. This is or was the starting point of my considerations. I personally am not at all an environmental economist. I have done a lot of work on financial speculation, and only by chance I came across a year ago this chart. This is the chart of the emission prices in the European emission trading system. And this struck me immediately because it looks exactly like the chart, the pattern of any kind of speculative price, be it stock prices, exchange rates, or commodities prices. You have this phenomenon of bull markets, you know, when prices go up very strongly, followed by bear markets. And then I did a little investigations, and it turned out that already for years, professional financial traders use the European emission allowances as a speculation vehicle in the same way as they use stock prices or whatsoever. And then I thought, I have to reflect about this problem because it is of such a crucial importance. Think of a company, of a steel company, like in Austria, the Föst. The Föst is responsible for 10% of carbon emissions, which is pretty much. And as long as Föst cannot accept a continuous rise in emission costs, of course, they will be much less motivated, speculating way. Maybe the price will fall again, and it's too difficult, too costly to think about moving to hydrogen technologies. Now, going back to my thesis, therefore, the last thesis, and this is what I will present more in detail, is the following. If we want to establish in the consciousness of all agents the expectation that emission costs will steadily and permanently rise, I stress this point, the expectation that it will never become cheaper to emit greenhouse gases, then we need to set a rising price path just for the three commodities. And I will show you it's technically extremely simple. The European Union could be a forerunner to fix over the coming decades a price for fuel, for crude oil, for coal, and for natural gas, just three commodities. The price path could be rising slowly, maybe just 5%, of course, a little bit faster than the general inflation. But given the interest compound mechanism clearly over the time, then the fuel costs, the emission costs necessarily will rise faster than the general price level. And how could this be done? Through some kind of a flexible energy tax. You start with the price path and you skim off the difference between the target price, valid in the European Union, and the world market price through a flexible energy tax. So this is the basic idea. Now, let's go a little bit to the problem of the transition towards, hopefully, a circular economy. Of course, a tremendously big problem, but it can be solved. Or the construction of a high-speed railways net across Europe as alternative to air transport. In principle, you can you can travel from Berlin to Paris by train in 3 to 4 hours. Not yet, but the trains in the tests run at a speed between 500 and 600 kilometers per hour. Clearly, this would take 5, 6, 7 decades to bring about, to implement, but I do think that if we want really to radically reduce, at least within Europe, air travel, then we need some kind of substitute. The other process is already going on, but very slowly, transition to emission-free cars and trucks, the latter probably driven by hydrogen technologies, and as I mentioned already, the switch to hydrogen technologies in energy-intensive industries. And last but not least, for all that, we need to increase very much the electricity production from renewable resources. What makes the issue of price expectations so tremendously important is the fact that the repayment or amortization periods of green investments are extremely long. I mean, if you look at, for example, an energetic renovation of a house or constructing a railway net all over Europe, these are investment projects for many decades. And due to that, the issue of planning security is of particular importance. Now, once again, what are the profits from those investments? The profits consist mainly of the avoided emission costs. If I know that emission costs will continuously rise, then I know it pays off to invest. But in order to establish this kind of expectations, we would need so much more certainty. So, how many minutes? 5 more? Okay, good. Over. Okay, so I accelerate a little bit, so I won't take so many minutes more. I just look at the simple fact how strongly the prices of fossil energy are fluctuating. You see the black line is the oil prices, but I don't discuss now the relationship to the dollar exchange rate, which is very interesting, but I skip this. As regards the role of speculation, if you look at this chart, so crude oil prices on a daily basis, you would see that, for example, the tripling of oil prices before the financial crisis was brought about in a sequence of shorter trends. And as professional speculators used to say, the trend is your friend. All those algorithms which try to profitably exploit the phenomenon of trending are based on this property of speculative prices. And here you see the instability of the emission of the prices of emission permits in the European emission trading system. I mentioned already that also in this case, to my mind, the instability is much too big to really foster or strengthen as a price incentive the move to any kind of green investment. So this is my last slide. The basic idea can easily be explained by a thought experiment. For example, if the European Commission had, in the year 2026, decided from now on, we let the crude oil price valid within the European Union grow by 5% per year, which is not so much. I mean, it's of course faster than the average inflation, but 5% is sustainable in a certain sense. But here you see the big difference, of course, to the present system, because under these conditions, people would be able to form reliable expectations and to change their behavior when buying a new car, when discussing the issue, should I isolate, renovate my one-family house, and so on. And final slide, so how could this be realized? Technically, it would be extremely simple, because at the end of each month, the European Commission looks what is the world market price of crude oil. We have data every second, so Brent or WTI, doesn't matter, okay? So maybe at the moment it would be 40 euros, but the target price would be 100, as an example. So here, maybe if you can see, so this would be the target price, this would be the world market price, meaning the quantity tax is 60 euros per barrel crude oil to be paid by the importers. Now, to not hurt the competitiveness of European companies, we have a compensating import tax, which is the same as discussed for a carbon tax. And if the first would export steel, then it is relieved from the energy tax, which is included in the product. So I don't go into technical details. Last week, my former institute, the Austrian Institute of Economic Research, has published this working paper, so who is interested can download it from the WIFO homepage. Thank you for your interest.
Thank you very much. It's always hard to stop someone who's passionate about his or her topic. Next up again, Helga Kromp-Kolb, please.
Okay, we've only got one planet. And this is something economics must respect. And I'm going to try to elaborate a bit on that, if I find the right tools. There are some basic assumptions I think we all make without ever talking about them, or rarely talking about them. One is that we only have this one planet and we have no hope of escaping to some other options. I know Stephen Hawking was discussing about preparing some sort of spacecraft in order to evacuate humans to some other planet. Well, I don't think we'll be fast enough. Besides, I'm not quite sure that there is one which we really want to live on. So let's not count on that. The second assumption is that we do have an interest in surviving as a species and not just as individuals. I'm not quite sure we can survive as individuals if we don't survive as a species, but in any case, somehow we do have to take care of each other. We have to find solutions which will make it possible for the human species to survive. The third one is, which I've added, and that's why it sort of was blank in the between, and this is part of what we learned from COVID-19, every life matters. I mean, most of us will probably have thought so before, but it's not been a general assumption. I mean, we do see that there's a difference in the way economics treats people with different possibilities of paying, in the way the financial system treats people with money or with no money. And there's lots of other reasons why some people are treated different from other people. But I think we can agree that every life matters or should matter. At least I would like to put this as a basic assumption. And the last one, there is no Deus ex machina, there is no God or whatever that will come and save us. We will have to do that on our own. It's our task. We shape our own future. And based on these assumptions, let's look at a few aspects. I mean, 15 minutes is not enough to go through the whole wide field. We know population is growing. And no matter how attractive additional people are, I mean, little babies are just cute, and it's great having them. So there's reasons as a sign of love, as a sign of a freedom of choice issue, personal choice. There's also the fact that they are, especially if there's many of them, they're cheap labor. They're also consumers. So there's lots of reasons to have lots of children. However, space on Earth is limited. And I'd just like to show you a small cartoon. When the planet is rather full, we don't have much space for everyone. I mean, we have 1 square meter per person here now, but this is just in this room. If you consider this on the planetary level, that we just have a limited space for everyone, then this cartoon says one of the men offers to his neighbor, "Excuse me, sir, but I'm prepared to make a rather attractive offer for your square." Well, I don't think anybody will agree to that. So money is not everything. It wouldn't buy us more space. There's another aspect to this population issue, and that is that humans crowd out other species. If we look at land vertebrates, so animals with a spinal cord that live on land, man and his domesticated animals, from cattle to pets, account for more than 96% of the biomass of all land vertebrates. And the wild vertebrates, and there's any number of species, there's so many of them, we probably don't even know all of them, they only account for less than 4% of the biomass. Now, that's not the way it used to be. This is something humans that has developed out of our actions. We can also look at that in a different manner. This is a graph. The line shows the correlation between the number of a species and their mass. And so you can see with a small mass, there's many of them, and with a big mass, there's fewer of them. So there's few elephants, but there's a whole number of, I don't know, insects. The only species that doesn't fit more or less into this line is humans. We're way up there together with our domesticated animals. So we've been crowding out the largest part of the animal species. And by the way, COVID-19 is one of the consequences of this, because we have much more contact with animal species that we've crowded into small areas. They live under stress, and their viruses jump over to humans because of the increased contact we have. So we've been really making use of the planet at the cost of other beings. And Edward O. Wilson, an ecologist, already in 1993 asked the question, is humanity suicidal? And he noted that it is unfortunate that a carnivore species, so a species that eats meat, became a dominant species. Because eating meat means we need more space, and we need more energy, and we use more resources. At the same time, we are a species that lives in small groups. We're not like ants or bees that live in a beehive. We live in small groups, at least that's what our genes want us to do. Evolution has not taught us to think very far ahead. We have been taught to react to immediate dangers, and we've seen that acting in the COVID crisis. In immediate danger, and immediately reactions came. But the longer-term crisis like climate change, that's not really in our genes. So the question is, are we therefore doomed, or are we ingenious enough to sort things out? Edward Wilson doesn't give an answer. And I don't think anyone really has the answer yet. And I think it's our decision what this answer will be. Now, don't say it's impossible that we are suicidal and that the human race will disappear. If we just look at this graph of the different civilizations that came and went, well, there's plenty of them, and there's no reason why ours should not also go. And if you look at the history of these civilizations over the last, I think it's 3,000 years in here, no, 4,000 years even. If we look at the history of those and look at why did these civilizations disappear, you can see here the reasons why they disappeared. There's no definite pattern. You can't tell, okay, now it's time for this civilization will probably disappear. But there's some elements that are repetitive that come again and again. One is climate change. In earlier times, it was not man-made, but climate changed, and that had consequences for civilizations. The other is environmental destruction. Then there's the question of inequality and oligarchy. There's a question of complexity. There's a question of external shocks, of course, and then, of course, there's also the question of chance. I just want to address two, that is environmental destruction and complexity. If we look at the interventions we do into our ecosystem, and each of these chunks here is an intervention, we can see that there's a lot of interventions, and many of them are beyond the blue circle. The blue circle sort of contains the boundary of safe activities. If we stay within the blue circle, we're safe. The ecological system can handle what we do. If we exceed the red circle, then we're in the zone of uncertainty and of very high risk. And you can see diversity loss, biodiversity loss, we're in a very high risk area. There's other areas where we're beyond the red circle. And climate change is between the blue and the red, which means we don't really know. We don't know, are we beyond the red or are we still within the blue? It's more likely that we're beyond the red than that we're still within the blue. There's uncertainty there, which science cannot at the moment resolve. Now, Guenther had a theory of the collapse of civilizations, and one of his reasons for civilizations is that societies become more complex. Societies are defined by Guenther as problem-solving organizations, and they solve problems typically by increasing complexity. And this means that there are increasing costs relative to the benefits, especially one example would be energy needs. This means that there's declining benefits to the population, and citizens lose faith in the abilities of leaders to solve problems. And this means that increasing complexity means increasing fragilities. And if several of these issues come together, for instance, climate change and increasing complexity, then civilizations have a problem. Now, nobody can deny that our financial system is extremely complex. Nobody can deny that many of our governmental systems have become extremely complex. Our economic system is extremely complex. So we are moving upwards in complexity, and we're certainly destroying environments. We have climate change, so we do have things to solve and take care of. In the past, we have looked at the global ecosystem as something which is source and sink for our human metabolism. Solar energy is what we get from outside, and we lose much of that again, thankfully, otherwise we would be heating up enormously. But we do use part of it to feed our ecological system and to feed our weather system, for instance, our climate system. And this global ecosystem is governed by physical laws. Within this ecosystem, we have a subsystem which is humans. And the humans have a subsystem which is economy. But we have been looking at it from the other way around. We've been looking at the economy for a large part, and there's a lot of myths about this, but the economy is sort of, if the economy thrives, then people will thrive. The ecological system is just input into the economy, just as humans are input into the economy. And it turns out that this is not a viable view, because essentially the ecological system is the basis of our life. The human system, the social system, is what makes life worth living. I mean, that's where the fun is, that's where the satisfaction is. And the economic system is really only something that should help us to manage the other two. And it's governed by man-made laws, so we can change that. We have, for the last, decades, been trying to raise the societal benefit of societies, of nations, by moving them up in the Human Development Index. That's what's on the horizontal axis here. But what has happened at the same time is that we've increased the impact on the environment, which is on the vertical axis here. So as nations move from being poor and missing infrastructure and so on, moving towards a higher Human Development Index, they have also taken more resources. And what we've been trying to tell people is that when countries become rich, then they become environmentally conscious, and then we can reduce our footprint. Well, it hasn't happened. They have all moved towards the right and upwards, and there's not a single country that has moved from upwards downwards in their resource use in a significant manner, because we all the nations should really be within this green area at the bottom. Sufficiently high Human Development Index, but low footprint. and we're not there. So this doesn't work. So we really have to try something else, because it seems that the economic system and the planetary system, Naomi Klein says, are at war. What climate needs is needs to avoid collapse is a contraction of human use of resources. And what our economic model demands to avoid collapse is unfettered expansion. And only one of these sets of rules can be changed, and it's not the laws of nature. So from this, it is quite clear that we must rethink our economic laws. And one of the attempts to do this, and I think it's one of the few visions that are really shared by the whole world, at least officially, is the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm sure you know these 17 Sustainable Development Goals, but you can contract them to just two agendas. One is the human security agenda, so a good life for all, and the second is the planetary boundaries agenda, so a good life for all within the planetary boundaries. And the important thing is, if you remember that diagram we saw before, the important thing is that we need to meet those challenges at the same time, synergistically, and to avoid competition between both. The nice thing is that if you look at the 17 goals at the same time, you find solutions which you wouldn't find if you only try to solve the climate issue, which you wouldn't find if you only try to solve poverty. Looking at things together gives you more, a larger field of possible solutions. And this is what we really need now. We have only this one Earth. The challenge we're facing cannot be solved by independent sciences that have contradictory solutions. It is time to bring the sciences together, but the task is not simple. And I want to close with some words from an open letter to the EU leaders that has been published on the 16th of July, signed by the young people, Greta Thunberg, some of the Friday for Future people in Germany and other countries, and meanwhile signed by some 50,000 other people. They say aiming to recover an economic system that inherently fuels the climate crisis in order to finance climate action is just as absurd as it sounds. And yet if you listen to our politicians, that is exactly what they are planning to do. And the clock is ticking. Doing your best is no longer good enough. You must now do the seemingly impossible. And that is what we're here to try to define. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Helga Kromp-Kolb. Next up, Karin Stieldorf, please. Thank you.
Well, we jump now to a totally different field. You will quickly see that there will be many pictures and, well, another attempt to sustainability. Well, I changed the title from design and planning to architecture because architecture is just universal from my view. Well, sustainability as a relevant planning factor. What has architecture to do with sustainability? When we go back to history, we find Vitruve saying, firmitas, utilitas, venustas. Well, already centuries ago, the necessary qualities of buildings were discussed. Some architects like Jacques Herzog and Pierre de Meuron argue that Vitruve's saying ancient triad of beauty, usefulness, and solidity has become obsolete and is only a case for the historian or for the speech by the mayor when a new building is inaugurated. Still, they admit that firmitas is an interesting topic for today's architecture. It challenges us to think about architecture in general, and it splits up into a variety of questions. What is a wall? What is a floor? Today, there is no easy way, no clear goal or simply interpretable architecture. The research of tradition might help. Well, and I put two pictures below, and this on the left side is the office of Herzog and de Meuron, and it's quite interesting. They tell us that they study old buildings because they find the magic in them. And on the right side, there's another building they designed not long ago. It's the Ricola Herb Center. It was built with Martin Rauch, our famous Austrian Lehmtonerde worker from Schlinz in Vorarlberg. It's a huge structure, and we can see that even for huge structures, natural materials can be used. Well, another saying, form follows function, but it could also follow energy, and it could also follow beauty. And so what makes a building a sustainable building? For sure, additional qualities beyond energy efficiency and costs are important. While global change, the exploitation of natural resources, we have heard about that much already, and increasing social conflicts are shaping today's times. Architecture can make an important contribution to many fields of sustainability, specifically to social stability. Therefore, sustainable planning measures must be promoted. For example, the State Prize for Architecture and Sustainability Awards forward-looking projects with a specific focus on social development and climate protection, or the Swiss Solar Prize and Norman Foster Plus Energy Building Prize has its focus on the integration of BIPV in the building envelope. On the left side, you see I have put a very simple graph with the main criteria of sustainability of sustainable building assessment. And we know there are certificates that have many criteria and sub-criteria. But this is, I think, to regard a few of them will help much, just to reduce them. It's energy resources, it's CO2 emissions, it's of course also design and architecture, because if buildings are not designed well, they won't last long. They will not be stable, and people won't like to live in them. It's also infrastructure and traffic, which is very much in the focus also of all scientists now. It's water and landscape, it's waste management, and then it's comfort and sun and light, which are very important. In the end, we would like to live in a building where we stay healthy and can live and where we can stay for a long time. On the right side, I put another graph, sustainable goals for real estate business. So it should not longer be the case that the efforts to build sustainable buildings are just not regarded. It should be and only the site or the location, perhaps the public transport, and all these things are regarded. So we know from the estate business, it's Lage. Location is the most important. And if the building has been designed following building ecology and, for instance, passive house technology construction, barrier-free design, all these topics, it's not much regarded until now. This is one of the prizes of the state prizes. It's an elementary school in Dornbirn by Untertrefaller Architects. It's a combination. It shows quite well that social aspects and aesthetics can be combined well. Of course, it's wood that's typical for Vorarlberg. Another time, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, but I put out those 10 were important for building and sustainable building. So we can see well that also for architecture, these goals have much importance on the one hand, and how much architecture and design and planning can influence. I put out another let's say, idea about architecture for people and society. I will make it a little bit shorter. So, of course, architecture for a long time has not only had a functional benefit, but now planners are tasked with meeting the increasingly differentiated demands of today's and future generations. Architecture can make a significant contribution to stabilizing society. This applies not only to the individual structures, but also to the street areas, so also for the regional planning and the urban planning. First and almost, sustainable architecture and urban planning consider the resources and space are not endlessly available. That's why the careful use of building materials and space and the use of renewable energies are becoming increasingly important. According to architect Wolfgang Frey, sustainability in planning is based on 5 principles. And here I move on to the next slide. So it's ecological, affordable, biophilic design should be ecological, affordable, also innovative, integrative, and it should be worthwhile. So it should we should have the impression that it makes sense to follow these 5 principles. Well, from the building now to the potential for global electricity generation from renewable energy. So is there enough renewable energy to really supply our buildings? And again, research tells us, yes, there is enough. And on the bottom, I've put some examples how for instance, photovoltaics can match with buildings. They can also match with old buildings. That will be our project work this time. It will increase from 3,400 terawatts to 31 terawatts within a few years. So we must not be afraid. There will not be enough energy to run our buildings. And here, one of the very beautiful buildings that is focusing not only, it was built for the wind power generation, Simonsfeld, but it also shows a lot of other topic. It has photovoltaics, and it also generates passive solar gains by south-oriented glazings. This is not that easy because, of course, there are many screws that you have to turn. It must not get too hot. It must be ventilated. So living well in buildings really needs a lot of knowledge. Well, I want to say a few words about the project that we're doing this year. Every year within the Green Building Solutions, we focus on a specific project work. Students will then use all what they have learned, hopefully have learned within 2 weeks, within the constructing, or in this case it's refurbishing an area which has some meaning for us. This time we chose the Otto Wagner area, which will soon be used by the Central European University. Out of this, we have chosen 2 pavilions that will be refurbished into a student's home, one into a student's home, the other one for a department, for a university apartment. For this, we also go back and have a look into the social history of former hospital area. And what you can see here was one of the hospitals. At that time, it already was a hospital somehow. Before, it was rather a Gefängnis, a jail. Before, people were held in a jail. So they were no longer locked, but this was in the Narrenturm. This was the first building where they really had room and were treated somehow. So it's quite interesting to, then there was a second one, and in 1901, the decision was made to build a new institution at Steinhof. I wrote here something also for the students who will have the possibility to get this lecture, what sustainable refurbishment means. So knowing that not only the earth is limited, but also the area is limited where we can build on, it is, from my view, it is important to learn to work with existing buildings. In the Otto Wagner site has to be developed will be developed in integral design process. It is I think most of you will know, here in this room will know the Otto Wagner area, which is situated in the west of Vienna. It has a beautiful Art Nouveau church and the pavilions of the former Lower Austrian State Healing and Nursing Home for the Mental and Insane. The historical value of this former hospital will be now used and adapted for a future use, and I think it's a very lucky chance to refurbish this area for university use. But handling the building structure for sure needs a lot of knowledge about the use of new technologies. A larger part of the ensemble will be used as the new location for the Central European University. There will be more universities, departments also moving there to fill the rest of the area. And in addition to the development of the spatial organization program, strategies for sustainable energy efficient construction for historic buildings are to be designed and their function to be checked. In addition to the support of experts in monument preservation and building technology, you will experience how to proceed simulating the thermal performance of the building envelope while designing. The goal is the integral and simultaneous use of planning tools and strategies for mastering complex construction tasks. Finally, the design has to be assessed in order to prove its grade of sustainability. Some pictures, maybe you know the church, which sometimes is also used by young people, perhaps not now, but normally. And how do we proceed? We first start with urban planning analysis and a big picture. So to develop, to first really know how the area, what the qualities and also the of the area are, and how to develop it in the future. So what is important? For instance, the distances to shops and in other institutions, to know what kind of transport is necessary. Then the students will refurbish one pavilion for a student's home or for a university department. Interestingly, the structure of the buildings fit very well. So they have, in the north, all the sanitary rooms are located, and in the south was also originally thought to give home to ill people in a way that they could recover. The given construction has to be treated, and it has to be thought over what can remain and what will be removed. Also here we have a very good situation, because what has been put in between to make the rooms smaller can now be removed again, and we will have, at least for the department use, very well suited rooms. Then we also it's about also the room between pavilions is also room, so also refurbishment of the exterior area. It was a very nice area, nicely developed area, which has which can be recovered in some way. Next topic will be energy efficiency, supply, and sustainability. Looking also on the details, Some pictures, how what can be done. Already a little bit, some ideas how to it can be refurbished without and regarding monument protection at the same time. So at the bottom you can put some exterior insulation. You can also, I'm quite sure you could also put photovoltaics without damaging the historic site. They can also be removed again in the end, so it's just two. Integral design, now I would like to show just a few pictures of former work with students where we always regarded integral design. It always was the idea to combine all these three goals, that beauty, functionality, and of course also most of the others that I have been mentioned concerning sustainability. We also, for this, we made a real catalog of requirements for housing that would help to the students to develop their buildings. I just show a few pictures very quickly. It's in Vienna, it was in Vorarlberg, green, and this was in Vienna, together with the Bonfond Wien, a small area that should be refurbished. How to use also old parts of buildings for recycling and making new pictures. This was done for a former area of the train station, northwest and northeast station. How to include people also and give them a possibility to work themselves. Sorry. Well, I'm just a few pictures now. It's very in the center to also work on cities, on centers of villages and cities, and regarding also the size that is necessary to regard this was a project for Kirchberg, also working, developing guidelines for a vision, how to proceed, also have a look, walks, and recognizing what is important to do there, looking on landscape, infrastructure, and mobility. That's just how can we develop architecture always regarding sustainability, and only then the design is done. Well, this is the, yes, this is the last picture I want to stay here. It will be part of the IBA next year, and it will be a totally sustainable building.
Thank you very much, and sorry, it's always hard to disturb someone, and so many people are so passionate about their topics, but the good thing, there's an entire summer school, and also there will be a panel discussion afterwards to discuss some more topics. Right now there will be a coffee break of now only 20 minutes, so I would kindly ask you to be back at 10 minutes to 7. I would also kindly ask the panelists to stay here for a group picture, and the rest please enjoy this special traveled coffee. Wear your mask, keep some distance, and see you later.
Okay, thanks a lot for this nice and concise introduction. I have my timer with me, so I stick to your 15 minutes. A very warm welcome to all of you who attend the summer schools on alternative economic monetary systems and on the green building solutions, also from my side, representing the ministry with a long name, but the main focus of climate action. I'm very happy that we've been a supporter of these universities now for, well, 2 years in the case of the green building solutions, and since 2014 for the Summer University on Alternative Economic and Monetary Systems. And I think it couldn't be a better moment in time than just right now to ask and maybe attempt some answers at the questions that these summer universities also pose. Focusing on the question how to organize our economy in a way that we live within the boundaries of our planet is of paramount importance. As the British economist Kate Raworth puts it, we have an economy that needs to grow, whether or not it makes us thrive, but we need an economy that makes us thrive, whether or not it grows. And the Green Building Solutions Summer Academy is looking at how we are going to live and design our housing, sustainable buildings and architecture, urban planning, ecological building design. For all of this, also in our house, in our ministry, we work a lot with the Austrian Green Building Standard, Klimaaktiv, that is one of the key policy tools that we use to advance this kind of new building systems. And I think these summer schools can be a very fruitful place for asking questions, for giving answers, but also for networking, for getting to know each other, for building strong and resilient networks that support the kind of transformation we need, that help us all to support each other in the work we do and in the big tasks we have before us. The question that was put to me in the title of my talk is huge. So, what is the transformative role of climate policy and how can Austria contribute to it at the global level, at the European level, at the Austrian level? And I'd like to start globally. And I don't think that in an environment as this one, I need to say anything about how acute the crisis is that we face in terms of the climate crisis. I think this is very clear for everybody in this room. I think it's also very clear that it's a global crisis. We need to solve it together. We need to act together also at the international level to solve this crisis. But then what the Paris Agreement gives us is a framework for solving this crisis, and a framework that's very clear, that gives a commitment to limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees, but it also is a second commitment that all stakeholders need to act, regardless of the level of policy making, regardless of the level of governments. It's not only international corporations, it's each of us in our communities, at the regional level, at the federal level, in our nation states. We all need to act together to solve this crisis. So I think if Austria has a role at this crucial moment in time globally, then I think it's to defend the integrity of the Paris Agreement. I think it's a huge task, and I think we need to fight this battle at all levels. We need to fight it in the EU for an ambitious contribution of the EU to the fulfillment of the Paris goals. We need to increase our own contributions to the Green Climate Fund, to also not forget about the questions of international solidarity that are there. And we need at home and in the European community to make sure we walk the talk. We don't only ask for higher goals, but we actually deliver on the ground in terms of climate action. So I think it's maybe not so much transformative than defending, but to defend the integrity of the Paris Agreement is, at this special moment in time, I think, one of our key tasks that we have as climate politicians. And so what is this special moment in time? I'm sorry, I missed all the contributions before, and I'm sure COVID and this crisis and what is this kind of situation that we're in now was one of the key topics that you faced. And of course there's voices from all over saying, is this now the time for climate action? Don't we have other problems? Shouldn't we do something completely different now? Every crisis is a turning point. And we are at this exact turning point at the moment. And I think it's not yet decided which way we turn. And if we turn more climate and environmentally friendly, or if we take another turn. And I think for me, I'm really deeply convinced that we need to do everything within our possibilities, nationally, at the European Union level, to make sure we make the right turn. A turn that gives us a double benefit, a turn that helps us deliver in climate policy and does something to stabilize our economy, to guarantee future competitiveness in greening also, and I know we can discuss this term for a long time, our economies in getting people back to work. So we need exactly now to look at the solutions that have this double benefit, and we have at this point in time not to lose track of the big questions that we face, the climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution. And I think there is ways to make sure that what we do now is aligned with the Paris Agreement, that we do now, whatever we do now avoids lock-in effects, that whatever we do now adheres to the do no harm principle. So looking at what we've done in Austria or what we are doing now, have we used this turning point, or how are we using this turning point? So what have we done in Austria? In Austria, we've recently presented an investment package where we will invest in the next 2 years 2 billion euro, so 1 billion euro annually in climate policy, in climate action. It's investments such as public transport, thermal insulation, a focus on renewable energy. For example, we'll be spending 750 million euros in the coming years on improving energy efficiency of our buildings, on thermal insulation, on the replacement of fossil fuel heating systems. We do this for this double dividend. We know that this is a contribution we need to accompany the legal acts we plan towards the energy transition. We need these support measures also to construct our houses and other buildings in a different way, but it also is a lever to support branches of our industry that have been hit very, very hard. But we've not only worked on direct investment, but we also looked at other measures we can kind of link to the climate question. So, for example, in our support for municipalities, we have a strong climate angle. In our school building plans, they all have to adhere to the Klimaaktiv standard now. In the tax cut, we do it for investments. We have an exclusion for investment in fossil fuels, and it will double the benefit if you invest in ecological transformation. So, is this... And in addition to that, of course, all the regular work continues on all the legal acts, on the green finance agenda, on many of the other things we do, because, as I said in this room, it's clear the climate crisis is urgent. We need to pull every possible lever that we can, and so we also use this moment in time now. So is it transformative? That was the question that was asked to me. And I think, yes, in some ways it is, because why? Because we focus on infrastructures. And changing infrastructures is key, because they stay. They stay not for 1 year, for 2 years, but for decades. And so to use this moment to change infrastructures, and also infrastructures, of course, we can debate a very broad sense of the term. Yeah? From, there's a German debate on mental infrastructures, there's a debate that we have on building or road or train infrastructures. Yeah, it can be used really in the broadest sense of the term, but I think we need to think in changing infrastructures. So, global level, national level, Europe. I think also in Europe, no need to say also in this round here, the decisions that are made, the turns that are taken at the European level are paramount for, or extremely relevant for what we do nationally. And so I've been very clear with 18 of my environment and climate minister colleagues that we've said we have a plan at the European level. Might not be perfect, the Green Deal, we can discuss that also, but we have a plan. So let's stick to that plan, because that's the best bet we have now. It was always meant as a climate policy and as an economic policy. And I think to put this thing together now, I think is crucial, and that's why we work very hard on linking all the discussions now in the recovery package, not only on national level, but also at the European level, to the climate objectives, to making sure that they benefit that they are of benefit to all the legal actions that are on the road now, from the circular economy package to the climate law at European level. There's lots of work to do. And I've been discussing this a lot with my German colleagues. And in many ways, I think the next half year for the German presidency is a historic one, with a historic task. And I think the Austrian role must be to support ambitious climate action at the European level in all the instances that we have, for our own benefit, for the global benefit of the Paris Agreement, and for simply doing what's necessary in terms of guaranteeing a good life for us on this one planet that we have. So to conclude with the question of transformation, I think also here, I think everybody in this room will agree transformation is needed, and it's key, and it has to happen. So let me just add 3 points to this discussion from my point of view. I think it's very important that we don't lose a just transition out of sight, that we leave no one behind, and that leaving no one behind is not an empty phrase, but is actually something we take seriously in the way we design policy nationally and at European level. I think we will only develop transformation, second point, in dialogue. I think that's also the strength of events like this, and the opportunities they give us for exchange and for discussion, because we need a constructive exchange between science, between policy making, between civil society, the economy, citizens at large, because we will need also to find acceptance for what we do and what we know needs to be done. And so I think the third point I want to make is, after half a year in this position and after 1 year in politics, some of you might not know, I used to be a climate activist, and I still am. I think I can still say that. Can I still say that? I think I still am a climate activist, but now as a minister, I think one of the key roles that politicians have is to accompany change. And I think to have a positive vision on change is something that's possible. Change is something that we can design together. It's not something that's a crisis or comes as a catastrophe, but is a collective task and a collective chance. I think that's one of our key tasks as politicians, because only that will get us out of the dichotomy that we face often now between jobs and climate, or GDP and anything else. But we need to focus on designing that change together. That's, I think, our shared responsibility. That's at least what got me into this job. And I'm very much looking forward to discussing possibilities to do so with you now.
Thank you very much, Leonore Gewessler. For now, I would kindly ask the panelists to join us on the panel and leave me the table in the middle. For the rest of you, there won't be a microphone today in the room, so I would ask you, if you want to ask questions, to go to slido.com. There is a code you can enter, which is 202007, and you can ask questions there and also rank the question. So if you think a question is particularly interesting, just rank it and it will go up if a lot of people rank it. We have 1 hour to discuss a huge topic, so I would kindly ask you to keep the questions short, the panelists to keep the answers short. And now, please come to the floor. Thank you. And so as we wait for the microphones, I have a huge task for the panelists. I will ask you for an initial statement on the topic, which is supposed to not be longer than 2 or 3 sentences. So what are the biggest challenges concerning the topic, which is fighting climate change in the times of economic and health crisis? sorry, is this? There will be a discussion, but only, so everybody can participate, also those at home, but only through the questions, so no interactive in between, because there won't be a microphone, and otherwise the people who are watching from home won't be able to listen. All right, should we get started? Mr. Schulmeister, you were the last to talk, so I would kindly ask you to start now. Yes, your initial statement.
So what are the biggest challenges to climate change? I mean, I'm somebody who is very much in favor of evolutionary processes, even though the situation as regards the climate, of course, calls for very radical solutions. But in any case, we need to find political coalitions which could bring about a concrete change. So, for example, how can we get at least a big part of entrepreneurs to also support very basic and important changes. Therefore, we need programs to mitigate climate change, which at the same time are also attractive to entrepreneurs. There are, of course, some of them, for example, green building clearly gives many business investment opportunities also to the business sector. A very big problem concerns certainly financing, because if one is in favor of evolutionary processes, it means that you have to take people where they are. And the problem is that the elites, if I can use in a very simple way, I mean, most of the university professors, politicians and so on, those who have the power, the consciousness of the elites is has been shaped by at least 30 years of neoliberalism. So, for example, all the debates now in Brussels, I don't even know if they found a solution finally, still are on a level like Chancellor Kurz recently wrote in an American magazine.
We will get back to exactly this letter a bit later.
Pardon?
We will get back to exactly this letter
so
a bit
I stop
later.
here.
Thank you. So I will go on to the other side. So your initial statement, please, on what are the biggest challenges also in your field?
Well, I think I just thought about it. I think there are three very big challenges. The first one is to prevent construction companies and planners to build everywhere, because it is this is how to say, it's the soul in this business that it is to be built. The second is how to make buildings energy efficient in a way that they can really be supplied by renewable energies. This is a big task to fulfill. And the third one is to make people behave in a good way in buildings.
Leonore Gewessler? All right, please.
Okay. I'd like to give a more general answer, but just before that, I just want to answer Christian. We wanted to include the audience. The problem is, after every person that speaks into a microphone, we have to disinfect the microphone, and that sort of makes things very difficult. So, sorry. Next year we will hopefully be able to do this in a more interactive manner. The biggest challenge, I think the biggest challenge at the moment is to come to a basic and widespread understanding that change can be a change for the better, and change is not is not something to be afraid of. It's different, but it doesn't mean it's worse. And I think we now really have a huge opportunity for change to the better. And I think to communicate that, to collectively define what is the better, I think that is our challenge at the moment. If we succeed in that, then I think it will sort of gather momentum and it will work on its own. If we do not succeed in that, it will be a very uphill road, and I'm not quite sure that we will manage that in time.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you. I'd like, well, I said a lot of things earlier, but I think looking at the discussions that we have ahead at the European level now in the next half year, where a lot of key decisions will be taking, not just tonight, but also in the coming month. What ambition does a European climate law have? What does that mean for national goals? What does this mean for national plans? I think it's really paramount to echo Stephan Schulmeister, to find coalitions and to build bridges, especially to those countries who are more on the, who would draw the opposite picture, who would not see this point in time as a chance to build back better, but rather use this point in time as a moment to say we don't need more climate action. Whether we need it at all might be another discussion in some of the debates. But I think to find coalitions and to build these bridges, because there is this moment in time now, and if we get it wrong now, it will be a problem for many, many years. And urgency doesn't need to be discussed in this room, so we really have to get it right this fall. And so building coalitions to enable this will be key. And yeah, maybe a second point, it's only 2 points now, in addition, is to constantly be alert of easy but false solutions that are often brought now in terms of the discussions on the recovery packages or on possible ways to the climate crisis. So we have to don't shy away from the big questions, automotive industry, and many of these questions that are discussed now in the recovery packages.
Thank you. I would like to start with you also with the first question, and would kindly ask the others to join in if you have thoughts on it too. The first question is about the letter you mentioned. To all of you who don't know, our Chancellor Sebastian Kurz published an opinion piece a couple of days or a week ago already in the Time magazine, and I quote now: "If you want to effectively fight climate change and at the same time stay on the path of economic progress, we should build on the best model human history has seen, liberal democracy based on a free market economy and the rule of law." So my question to you, is a free market economy the right path to a more sustainable future?
Can I pass it on, or?
The others will talk too.
Well, we're sitting in a summer university of alternative economic and monetary systems. Our ministry is hosting a biannual conference of saying we need to Wachstum im Wandel. Yeah, it's growth in transition, I think, is the correct English title for it. So we see where some of where we have failed until now, and we see that in the way we do it now, we only have individualized cost, but not the societal cost in the system. So there's a lot of things we need to discuss. What role GDP has? How do we how does this become a means towards an end and not an end in itself? So there's loads of questions we need to discuss, obviously, but to do that in a democratic society, I think nobody would question that.
The free market economy was the question, if you want to add. But I think you wanted to add something beforehand on the subject?
Yeah, I don't know who has written this piece of Kurz for Kurz, but this person does not know very much about liberal economics, because even within the theory of free markets, it's absolutely clear that the market does not price climate change. This is a fundamental market failure called an externality. The economic rationale is extremely simple. If the price of something is zero, then it will be too much consumed. And in a pure market economy, if you emit any kind of greenhouse gas, in a pure market economy, you don't have to pay. Therefore, it needs some kind of pricing is needed. But as I mentioned in my presentation, at least also very important market failure, and this relates to the issue of complexity of our system, is the dominance of financial markets, which systematically destabilize exactly those prices which are decisive for climate change, like prices of fossil energy, and unfortunately also of emission allowances. And the great challenge will be how to change the mind, the perception of the elites within a relatively short period of time, which has been shaped over more than 30 years by neoliberal thinking. So it would be easy in this respect maybe to address entrepreneurs, because many entrepreneurs, in particular of small and medium enterprises, are of course not the winners of these excessive activities in financial markets, but as regards the political elites, it is still extremely difficult to convince them, for example, that financing this huge project of transformation process towards a sustainable circular economy, that these financings cannot be done by taxes. It's simply impossible. Not even overcoming the crisis will be financed by taxes. We will need financing simply by the central banks, which they are already doing, but the elites still pretend as if, and also Kurz said recently, money does not fall from heaven, therefore any deficit has to be financed through taxes. And that's one reason why he was against giving grants to Southern European countries. But money comes from the central bank, not from the heaven, but producing 100 billion of euros costs absolutely nothing.
Coming back
just a click on the computer.
to climate change, is there something you want to add on the topic?
I think in the end it's really the task of politics to arrange a frame that makes change possible. Yeah, I think it's not, of course we can contribute and behave in a different way and change ourselves. But in the end, I think the free market is not the solution, because it would leave it to the market to change things, and this is not. I think this is not possible.
Well, I think we don't even have a free market. I mean, the market is free wherever whatever you call them. I hate to call them elites, but wherever the powerful want them to be free, and they're not free where they don't want them to be free. So the term is not really well defined, and within that definition, of course, you can work climate change in a free market if you regulate the market where it needs regulation. You might then not call it free market, but that's what we have now. I mean, whenever there's a problem, there's regulation or there's support of the market or whatever. So it's not really free. So I think the word means nothing. I have one point of hope in this piece by Kurz, by our chancellor, and that is that in this short piece, there's one sentence which says, economic growth is not an end in itself. And that is a huge step forward, because it's not so long ago, 1.5 years or maybe 2 years, that they wanted to put that into our constitution, that economic growth is the goal of Austria. So if he now says this is not a goal in itself, I think there's really some progress. Not enough yet, but...
Thank you. I would like to continue with a next question, the best rated from Slido, from Julius. He says, how do we move away from the, I quote, arguably flawed concept of we need to protect the economy alongside the climate to putting the focus on the climate itself? Helga Kromp-Kolb, please.
Sorry, I have to bend over. Yeah. I'm not sure that it makes sense to have climate as the sole focus. I think we need the SDGs as the focus, and climate as a very important aspect of that focus. And I think that is where we really need to go. And then I think the protection of the economy, I mean, we were discussing a health issue these last months, and suddenly the economy was not important. Health was more important. So if we can keep it that way and look at health and climate change, then maybe we have a better focus. So I think it's, I don't think we'll succeed if we keep discussing economy versus climate. I don't think this is the real question. I think the question is, how can we achieve well, as I said, good life for everyone within the planetary boundaries, and what does economy have to look like in order to make that possible? And I think you can get a very large consensus that people want to have a good life, and I think especially in Austria, most people will agree this would have to be within the planetary boundaries. So I think that is not something that is in the basis controversial. What we really have to offer is a good economy that supports this, and a good path towards this. Because what really hinders or impedes change is fear, is the fear people have of losing their job, of losing their existence, of whatever, a fear of loss. And I think if we can show that it is not a question of loss, but it's a question of gain, maybe through a bit difficult transition, but in the end there's gain, then I think we can manage that. And the gain must be the personal gain, the gain as a society, and not the gain of an economy, because the economy is not what is relevant for I mean, it's supportive, or it should be supportive of this gain in personal and societal life.
Taking on this question in two directions here. First of all, Leonore Gewessler, how can politicians, how can policies take this fear? And to you, Mr. Schulmeister, the last economic and financial crisis hasn't been that long ago. Is there any chance, or are you optimistic that there will be a new aftermath this time, which could be more sustainable?
Hard to tell. I mean, history tells us that usually learning in society takes place after crisis, big crisis, but crises are not sufficient conditions for learning. Take, for example, the World Depression in the 1930s. in countries like Germany and Austria, fascism was the learning, the political reaction. And I expect for the coming year a tremendous difficult challenge for Europe, because once the question will be asked, who will finance those billions of dollars? And of course, the conservative parties will not be in favor of taxes, taxing the rich and so on. And they will argue that this is Sachzwang, that is, you are forced to save. Where can you save? The social, the welfare state, of course, like always, like it was done after the financial crisis. And this will be a big support for the right-wing populists, because they will argue, like Orban already does, social warmth within the national community, so to speak. So I'm not so optimistic that the simple fact that we are facing a tremendously deep crisis, much deeper than the financial crisis was, will necessarily move the political evolution in the direction of, relearning the value of the European social model, relearning the importance to have a strong welfare state and so on, because the issue of who will pay for that is a core issue. In this sense, it was a big progress. It was a big progress, this I have to admit, that the European Commission made this proposal that for the first time in the history of Europe, a European institution takes up credits. This is certainly some kind of breakthrough, and the biggest hope I still have are the central banks. We are depending on the cleverness of Ms. Lagarde and her colleagues, and she's really good, I think.
So may I just ask, are you not arguing within the financial system? Wouldn't there be a possibility of changing the financial system so this question does not come up in this manner?
Yeah, sure, but this would necessitate the insight that we have produced or created over the past decade an unnecessarily complex system. The financial system is so complex that nobody can understand what's going on. For example, the development of stock prices over the past 3 months is just crazy. The stock prices lost 40% of value within 4 weeks. It was more than ever in history, only to recover afterwards. At the time when all the data from the so-called real economy were deteriorating tremendously, but at the same time, the financial markets are, so to say, the freest markets. So, as a professional economist, I look at financial markets and say very low transaction costs, immediate pricing. So how can we just close the markets? I mean, my proposal concerning the oil prices is, of course, a proposal this market should be closed, but in this case, I can argue inherently within the logic of market theory. But as I say...
Does it have to be a market?
Pardon?
Does there have to be a financial market? I'm provocative now.
Yeah, financial market
I mean, it originally was a means of exchange. It was not part of a market. Money.
Just a short answer. It depends which type of market. For example, we need, of course, possibilities that people who spend less than they earn, who save, that these savings get in some way allocated to entrepreneurs, maybe government. So this function should be fulfilled, but it need not be done by crazy derivatives markets where you trade, for example, emission permit prices. So it's a difficult question, which I can't answer very shortly.
All right. For the next question, I also kindly ask you for a shorter answer because we're quite short in time. Thank you. So the question was, how can politicians or policies take fear?
I'll still make a reference to the question that was originally posed and to the way the discussion has moved. I think nothing will be automatic. There will be no automatic learning that will make it better this time on our way out of the crisis. It will depend on each and every one of us in our respective places that we actually draw lessons from the past and take the right turn on this way out of the crisis. And what makes me a bit more hopeful maybe now is that you mentioned one thing that is decisively different from the last crisis. We're discussing for the first time own resources, climate-related eco-taxes, resources at the European level. Second thing hasn't happened ever before. Climate is back on the agenda in a way that some of you might be even surprised, yeah, that we are still in the middle of the crisis. We're talking about a green way out of this crisis, yeah. So there is reason for hope, and there's most of all reason to keep on fighting for the right things in all of our respective places where we are engaged and where we are active. And of course, and to go back to, of course, for politicians, it's a special responsibility to go back to the discussion we had earlier. Every market is within societal boundaries. Every market is within the rules we give it. And so, of course, that is our key role. And with regards to the economy, I can only say what I say when I talk to entrepreneurs. If we want to make sure that we still have a market, that we still have products, that there is still some competitiveness of European industry or economy, then yeah, then it's time for climate action now, because otherwise this will be lost. And so we really need to, I think, the second part of the story. So where's the problem? And the second part of the story. So where's your chance? Yeah, where is what we can all gain from it? Of course, from the economy side is only one thing. Yeah, but the question, how will, I said earlier, it's about finding a way to talk about change. Yeah, also Helga said that earlier. I think it's really paramount that we all have a picture or are able to paint a picture of what this life will look like. What does it mean, a good life for all in 2050? How will I be mobile? How will I travel? What will my life be like? Because it's a life full of quality, but sometimes we are not clear enough in what this is, and we're not blunt enough to actually paint it as a positive vision.
Yes, please.
Can we talk about changing monetary systems without speaking about the different role and concepts that the super states have, about China and the competition between China and America? So I think this will have a big influence, because we can, of course, act, and we can be we can proceed and be perhaps exemplary and take exemplary actions and hope that the others follow. But what about the others?
Anybody who wants to answer this question?
Well, I think there's steps we can take without the whole world coming along, and there's other steps which we can't take without the whole world going along. If you look at the economy of the common good, for instance, these are things that individual companies can do. These are things which the state can do. So there's things you can do. You don't have to automatically switch completely, but you can run things in parallel. And if it turns out that whatever you're running in parallel is more successful, is better, is more useful than something else, then you have the examples you need in order to convince others to also change things. And I think Europe still, I don't know how long, but Europe still has a leading role in the world and is in a position to have good initiatives and to make good suggestions. and if they make sense and if they solve problems, then I think others will be willing to follow.
A question closely connected to that one is one that was posed earlier by someone anonymous. And the question is, how can the focus on growth in the European Green Deal and in the SDGs be reconciled with the fact that growth necessarily means increasing environmental damage? Who'd like to answer this question? Mr. Schulmeister?
I don't agree. I mean, I don't think that economic growth under any circumstance necessarily means that it damages the environment. I mean, as I said, the capital stock for a circular economy necessarily will be very different from the capital stock today. For example, the way how buildings are constructed needs to be fundamentally changed. We need so much refurbishment to get into the direction, at least, of reducing emissions just from heating the buildings. If we want to reach that, I made a very simple calculation. If the overall stock of buildings in Europe would be renovated as much as possible in order to save on emissions, this would imply additional economic growth between 2 and 3% per year for 20 years. Because if you imagine the overall stock of buildings in the European Union, it's pretty much. Now, what would the climate balance be? Hard to answer. If you look just at the period when the renovation takes place, emissions will rise, in part due to the additional economic growth, in part simply due to the production process. So you need isolation material, need not necessarily be styropor, but in any case, you need the stuff to isolate the house. You need to produce the heating pumps and so on. But over, say, 50, 60 years, the balance might become very different, because then we have the advantage of saving on emissions. But this example for me shows that to say in any case will economic growth be bad for environment, I don't subscribe. Another example would be a network of high-speed trains. I mean, either we say we want a society where people do not travel more or less at all over distances of more than 2,000 kilometers. Okay, then we can simply say we don't travel, or we travel very slowly, or we say no, people will have an interest to travel also in the future, but we would like to have people traveling in a way which does not hurt the environment. But then we need a network of railways, a trans-European railway network. Now, the production of such a railway network means economic growth. I mean, you cannot produce a railway network all over Europe so that you can go from one place to another in a very ecological way, because, I mean, these are the lowest emission costs trained, but the production of a train network is expensive. I mean, this is growth.
Let's stay a bit more with housing, since it's also a topic of this summer school. I would like to go over to you. Do you think it's realistic that now, within an economic crisis, that people are willing to invest to make their house, their homes, or even companies to make them more greener? Because it's only going to be good for them, for the environment in the long run.
I think what has happened in the last months really makes me hopeful that it is possible. The question still is, and I think this has not been explored much, how to motivate people, how to do that. I think it is possible. And I think people are ready, and I think it's a good point of time. But I think it's I think we have criticized and discussed how how the success of motivating people to fight COVID-19 was done, but we also discussed very critically that fear was one of the means of doing it. So we can see that it is possible, but what is the strategy to reach it?
Thank you. Would you like to add something? I'd like to come back to a next question from the audience, from Magdalena, with the most thumbs up. It's to you, Leonore Gewessler. How can this positive vision of change be translated to the rural parts of Austria where politics are still stuck in the old ways and uninspired? This is a quote.
I think it's a super important question because, of course, on the one hand, cities often are laboratories, and we need laboratories to try new things, to try new forms of mobility, but we also need these laboratories all over Europe, all over Austria, also all over Europe, yeah. And they are there. They're also there in rural communities, and I think and that's also quite honestly a learning for me in the last half year, and in this political constellation, to have this much more in mind also, and what are the different needs, and how can you also differentiate, and how can we find solutions that are targeted and tailor-made to different kind of lives, simply. Yeah, and so of course there is no one solution that fits all, but I think we need to we can have a good life within the planetary boundary, whether you live in the countryside or whether you live in the center of a city, but it's different solutions that we need to that, and that it looks probably differently. But to have this sensibility and to look at that much more closely, I think is something that at least is in my questions a lot these times. Tax reform, for example, public transport. How do you work with enlarging offer for public transport? It works completely differently between cities and the rural communities. It needs different solutions, but we need the solutions throughout. Yeah.
May I add something? Education. Education, I think, is an important factor to also spread these ideas to the rural areas. And I used to think it's too slow, but we know that the question of collecting waste separately and so on, that came from the kindergartens to the families. And so I think education is an important factor.
Yes. Can I add one more point? I agree, but also in the cities. It's not per se a city-countryside debate, just because I think especially this kind of sensitivity I think we need to have when we talk about the city-countryside divide. Not make it a divide, but a bridge.
Another question for you, relating to this, having worked in climate science for a long time, do you think, Leonore Gewessler said before, you need to tackle the problem on all levels, or fight the problem on all levels? Do you think there is a way to start? So should it be national policies, should it be EU policies, or do we need worldwide targets as the SDGs to tackle climate change?
Well, I think we really need all levels, and there's plenty of us, so everybody can take up a different level. I think there's really enough to do, and there's a lot of people who can do something. And I think the population is probably much farther than politicians think. If you look at the results of the participatory process in France, it's really, it seems surprising what people came up with, but in reality it's the logical thing that they come up with, and it's just a question of politics being closer to what people really think. I mean, I spend a lot of time giving talks all over Austria. Of course, the people who come to my talks are people who are predisposed to doing something about climate change. Yet, there's a huge number of them. And I think that in reality, it's not so difficult to get at least Austrians, I can't talk about the rest of the world, but I don't think it's so difficult to get Austrians to support sensible solutions. I would hope that there was a good way of, at the moment, there's a habit in Austria that if somebody from one party has an idea, the first thing that happens is that the others say it's impossible, without even having thought about it. And this is also reflected partly in the media. There's a very rapid answer of this is not possible or this is negative or so on. Why can't we develop a more open character of discussing things? I mean, you can still in the end come up with the answer, no, it's not, it's no good. But why is that always the first answer? I think if we don't open up our minds and our discussions to accept new ideas, ideas that are out of the box and that maybe in reality are not good, but at least to discuss them and maybe in discussing them come up with better ideas. I think we need to do this to a much larger extent, and this is something which I think our politicians need to do and something which I think our media need to do, and in the end it's something everybody needs to do wherever they discuss things, with their friends or with their Stammtisch or wherever. We are very fast in saying, no, that's no good. We don't test things.
You're apparently not the only one thinking there's an increasing polarization. Mark does so too. I think it would be interesting to hear the answer from an economist. The question is, how do we deal with increasing polarization driven by extremes on both sides of political spectrum in the face of increasing need for radical reform?
I have a little bit problem with the speakers. So what was the question?
How do we deal with increasing polarization driven by extremes on both sides of the political spectrum in the face of increasing need for radical reform? Easy one.
I mean, I would say, and this is very much following Helga's thought, if politicians would start from a concrete vision, how could the Austrian society look like in 10 years from now, in 20 years from now, and deriving from such a concrete picture a set of measures, this would be a very different approach to, for example, the approach to start with some concrete measures. Take, for example, the problem of pricing of carbon emissions. When you start from the alternative, either carbon tax or, emission trading systems, in the center are the costs. If you would start, for example, my proposal, from the target, namely to systematically but slowly make emissions more costly, it, I think, makes a difference in the way how you sell your policy. And to keep this difficult question or the answer shorter, if you start from a concrete vision, how the Austrian society could look like, then some issues of inequality could be mitigated. For example, if you convince people, and the great majority is convinced that climate change and fighting climate change has highest priority, and you present them concrete ways showing how in the income bracket of people earning just 1,500 euros a month, they could be compensated in some way so that economically she would be better off, but still also for the poor, emission of greenhouse gases must become more expensive.
So
I mean,
your image would be to have a concrete vision, and by that you could kind of counteract the increasing polarization, to summarize it. The concrete vision is important.
my vision.
No, the concrete political vision.
Yeah, I mean, this is hard now to describe that, but I really believe that in the memory of the people, for example, the Kreisky era is positively associated because people think at that time policy took also care for the little man, it took care for social coherence. What would that mean? It would mean that the idea of the welfare state should once again be popularized, so to speak, but this time in connection with the idea to find a better balance between economy and nature. There are always some kind of conflicts, but what I call the vision would mean a concrete picture. How would people travel from one place to the
Yes,
other?
I would kindly ask you to...
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. We have some more panelists. I would like to pass on the question to you, because when it comes to both political wings in Austria, we have a right party, the leftish other side would be the Green Party, I guess. So what is your opinion on this question?
Can I just pick up very quickly from the one point of the vision? Obviously, you start with the picture, and climate neutrality 2040 is quite a strong picture, implies quite some changes, and needs action at all levels, and needs action in the tax system. Yeah, but if you're asking me how to tell the story, I would say we need, for the first time, to make the tax system a tool for climate action. We failed dramatically in this, so we need to make it a tool for climate action. And then, yeah, that means something. That implies something. That implies changes. That implies something will cost more, something else will cost less. And it's our duty too, and that's what I mentioned earlier, to keep in mind that with whatever policy we do, it's not a question of climate policy exclusively, but to keep the societal impact very much at the core of the debate. And just transition should not be an empty phrase, but just transition needs to have content with it. So if we look at the building stock, you mentioned it earlier, and how can we renovate it, and is that there will be a point in time when we need to say, and that point is now actually, where we need to devise the support systems we have with a much more stronger social focus, with a much more focus on who needs support to which extent. And how can we do that? And in order to develop that, we need dialogue, and we need to bring the different views together. We need to not shy away from the difficult questions, because some questions are we need to bring the opposing views also at one table. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there something you'd like to add?
We haven't talked much about transport yet, because then we're very soon in the transactions between different big countries like China. Transport enables very cheap things to be imported, and at the same time it prevents from really good climate actions. So I think transport is a very big issue. Not just traveling, but transport.
Transport is also a good transition to the next question. I won't choose the top ranked one, just that you know why, because I think Mr. Schulmeister talked the most now, and I want to keep it equal. So how can we mitigate increasing consumption standards in already developed nations? Helga Kromp-Kolb, please.
I think this is a question of mindset on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's also part of the circular economy. I mean, if we produce products that are longer lived, that are repairable, that are reusable, that can be dismantled afterwards, products will become more expensive, but they will have a longer life, and you will have to buy fewer. So I think that's all part of this change we're in. And then I think that some action needs also to be taken in the marketing issues, because at the moment, money you spend on marketing is tax-free, so it reduces your tax. Why do we do that? I mean, that is something which just heats up consumerism. So we could take action there and no longer support marketing, especially marketing that essentially does no longer give any information about products. Very often I see some advertisements and I don't even know what they're trying to sell. They're trying to sell a feeling or some sort of emotion that I should be buying something. I don't even know what. They're just selling the brand. I think that's just something we must do without. We cannot afford this consumerism. And I think switching over to circular economy will be a first step in that direction. But I think we also need to add additional measures like making advertising expensive.
Talking about consumerism, the topic today is also the corona crisis, and there has been a change in consumerism apparently, so people stay more at home, they travel less, they consume less. Do you think that will have a long-term impact? Who wants to answer?
Well, some parts will. I mean, I think that businesses as well as academics have seen that they don't have to fly to every meeting, that you can have some meetings which are via internet. So I think some things will remain in a positive sense. I still think it's important to also meet people in person, but it doesn't have to be that frequent. So I think a good mixture is what we'll have to head for. So I think some of these things are useful. I think some people have found out that using a bicycle is fun, and maybe they will stick with their bikes. I hope that people will forget or lose that feeling that public transport is dangerous, because that is something which is counterproductive. So some things we have to actively work against, and others I think we have to work towards having people stick with the new habits. And that is, again, question of, is the infrastructure there, the infrastructure in the head as well as in physical means. So I think there's a lot we can learn from this, but I think Leonore Gewessler said this, nothing will happen on it, well, something will happen on its own, but not necessarily the best outcome. So if we want an optimal outcome out of this crisis, then we have to work for that, and that is not something which automatically happens.
Well, concerning design and planning, I think that home offices will be more popular, and this goes along very well with digitalization. And this will also mean that offices will be built differently, that maybe people are only 2-3 times in the offices and they stay at home in the other time. Maybe this will also help socially, looking after children together. So there are many positive options in that.
I saw you took notes, so what do you think? What will be the positive takeaways also from the corona crisis?
I can build up on what Helga and Mrs. Niedorf also said now. So I think some of the things are here to stay. Yeah, and Helga mentioned a couple of the examples, and it's good that we can actually build on some of the things, and that. But also, their home office for me is one good example, because what it has done now, unfortunately, is mostly meant that women at home took over childcare. Most men, or many men, how do I say that that it doesn't sound so, well, while men were more often prone to go to the office because their job was seemingly more important. So if we say we want to foster home office, then I think we need to see how can we do it in a way that it doesn't that it doesn't reinforce gender politics of the 1950s. So I can just give one small example. What we did was that in the support package for communities, we built in one thing, that communities who want to support their inhabitants can actually build in whatever public building out of home workspaces, so that actually you can work from your community, but not from your home necessarily, but you have a serious working environment. You have still the question between, you have some kind of separation between private life and work life. So how can we draw from these lessons that we've seen, that actually home office can be beneficial for climate because it reduces the need for mobility, it's more quality of life, etc., etc. So what can we do now to support exactly these kind of transformations? And I think we need to look in every step of policy making. We need to look into where can we find the angle for really fostering transformation and not going back to wherever. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, there's of course a big systemic problem. I mean, I agree with Helga and also Leonore that it would be possible that we travel less to conferences, that there will be more home office, that durable consumption goods could more easily be repaired. But statistically, this of course means that gross domestic product, as we measure it, goes down. At the same time, we have 30, 40, 50 million people unemployed in Europe. And at the same time, we have robotarization. That means that hourly productivity over the coming 10, 20, 30 years most probably will rise. And how can we reconcile these different problems? Because if we think we can do it without economic growth, then we would need a very radical change in the distribution of working hours. So we would need new working time models. But politically, it is extremely difficult to put this through during a time where so many people are unemployed, because usually the social mobility, the openness to reforms is very low in crisis, because people who, for example, usually work more than 40 hours, they will try to keep it because they need it for their son who is unemployed. It is no coincidence that reductions in working hours, new working time models were put through in times of prosperity, because at that time people are relaxed, they don't fear that they could get unemployed. So and the last issue in this context is, without economic growth, capitalism is not possible. That means at the same time the end of capitalism, because capitalism means you need a positive rate of return on capital. If the profit rate sinks to zero, capitalism is over, because why should I accumulate capital if I don't get anything out of it? Now, I can be, maybe there are many people who would be very happy if we approach the end of capitalism, but this is not so simple. I personally do not think that the end of capitalism is on the agenda of history over the next 3-4 decades.
But I think it's a good question. I think it's a good question to close with, also for the students who participate in the summer school. Is there an end of capitalism? Is it necessary or not? I think that's something you will be able to discuss. Since we've already spoken longer than we should have, I'd like to thank all the panelists for being here, for answering the questions. Also all guests here and also online. I know there's some question who hasn't been answered so far. I know you need to leave soonish, but I hope the others might be able to stay a bit longer and maybe answer some more questions. There will be a buffet, unfortunately only for those who are here with us in real life and not online. It's vegan and vegetarian, so I'm happy about that too. Yes, please keep some distance before you leave. And there is also two more things. There will be a video, so before you jump up now, there's a video from all those who can't be here today or only here online, so please stay and watch it. And you wanted to add something.
Yes, I'm sorry. Can I answer one more question? You didn't ask it to me. What can you all do? Stay critical, stay active, make climate action a question for everybody, not just for, I happen to be from the Green Party, but it has to be a question for every single person and party and activity. So if you can contribute to that, that will help a lot.
So we can leave the panel now and leave the floor to the video, which is, I think, a couple of minutes long. Thank you, everybody. Please keep your distance afterwards and join us at the lovely buffet downstairs. Thank you.
G'day, my name is Alex Stanley. I come from Adelaide in South Australia, but I'm living and studying now in Vienna. I have been hearing a lot about how we can build back better from this coronavirus crisis in the media and from our politicians, but I don't hear any of them talking about the detail of what that involves. So I'm motivated to take this course so that I can understand more about how we might do just that and build back better.
Hello, my name is Sonia Mojitsky. I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, but I'm currently living in Klosterneuburg, which is a small town outside of Vienna. I applied to the Green Building Solutions program because I've tried my hardest to have a low environmental impact in my personal life, but I still have so much to learn about how that can be applied to my professional life as an architect in training. This program is kind of my first step in that direction, as afterwards I will be beginning a Master of Sustainable Architecture through the Technical University of Norway. So I'm very excited to learn all that I can in the next 3 weeks and continue that on into my Master's afterwards.
Hola a todos, I am Renata Madueño and I'm from Lima, Peru, but I'm currently staying in Miami, Florida, the States. Well, during my studies in international business, I could learn about international monetary systems and its huge importance to make efficient agreements, trade, and commerce between nations. Also, I've learned the monetary system of my country, which is not the most efficient one, nor benefit equitably the population. So that's why I'm encouraged to learn about alternative systems that truly involve the necessities of the society and also could have a sustainable development, not only economically, but also socially and most important, environmentally. We'll see you everyone soon and don't forget to stay safe. Bye!
Hola, my name is Alejandro Tangasi. I'm an architect from Tijuana, Mexico, the city where I was born. I'm taking this course because I believe the architects like myself have a great responsibility over climate change. We are decision makers and we can have a great impact on the overall performance of a building if we make the right decisions early on the design process. I'm very much looking forward to meet you all and see you soon. Adios.
Servus, my name is Ivo and I'm from Vienna. I'm joining the summer school AEMS because I want to learn new pathways for our current economic system. I'm convinced, unfortunately, that the current system will lead to the extinction of humanity and many species in the world. And of course, we need to change that. By joining the summer school, I want to learn about new pathways, how we can transform our current system, to a system that is more life-embracing and more sustainable. And I hope that we can succeed in this. Thank you, and it's very nice to meet you.
Marhaba, this is Rama Al-Hammami. I'm an architect from Syria. I'm really happy to be one of the Green Building Solutions participants. Obtaining this opportunity is such a great involvement for my career and personal life. The GPS journey will support my passion in sustainable architecture and green building design, which is one of my goals. Also, meeting people from different cultures and fields is really important to share experience and discuss many challenges in order to make plans and find solutions towards sustainability. Also, raising the awareness of our communities about sustainable goals development and green building designs in order to make a change in our life. So yeah, the green makers are coming.